Well, my next guest, Calvin Robinson, is a British commentator and free speech warrior. He writes for many UK publications, including The Guardian, The Daily Telegraph, and, of course, The Spectator. And he's a senior fellow at Policy Exchange. Calvin is also a former assistant principal and an expert in education, along with many other things, including being a staunch critic of the BBC, which he believes should be defunded. We might need Calvin out here as well to work on the ABC, defund the ABC campaign. And Calvin abhors and has fought tooth and nail against critical race theory. This is this insane neo-Marxist academic garbage that is behind all the current racial division we see throughout the West. Calvin joins me now from London. Calvin, how are you, mate? Great to see you.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Calvin, briefly just explain critical race theory and then explain why this new report that has come out attacking critical race theory and things like institutional racism and unconscious bias, why it's so important.
Well, I mean, the idea of critical race theory is that we look at the world through racial lens. So wherever we look, we see racism. And that's a problem because, in the modern West, racism isn't as much of an issue as it was. And we need to celebrate the progress we've made before we can actually move forward and stamp out the final bits of racism that exist in our society. So what the government have done is they've commissioned an independent report, and this report has put aside all of that rubbish rhetoric about, white people being oppressors and black people being victims just based on the color of their skin, all of that critical race theory nonsense, and put it aside and looked at the evidence. This is an evidence-based research piece that actually suggests there are many racial disparities in our country, in the United Kingdom, but a racial disparity is not irrefutable proof of racism. And what they've done is they've looked so deep into these issues that are affecting people in our society and found that actually, you know what, the place where you live, your location has a lot to do with it. Your class, your family background and your upbringing has a lot to do with it. Your religion, your culture, the family structure, single parent families versus two-parent family households, multi-generational households, all of these things have a part to play in your place in society and how well you succeed or don't succeed. And to pin everything on race is naive and misguided and kind of disingenuous, to be honest with you, because we do live in the most tolerant, most inclusive, most diverse nation in the world. I'm sorry to compete with you on that front, but Great Britain is an amazing place to live. I'm sick of the left talking it down at every opportunity.
Explain to me unconscious bias and why the report kind of said, no, the unconscious bias training is not the way to go. And also, you've kind of touched on this, why this accusation of institutional racism and systemic racism and all this is a flawed accusation, but particularly unconscious bias. Give me your thoughts on that.
So the idea behind unconscious bias is that, again, it's from critical race theory, because either people are overtly racist, which is what we used to call people that are racist, people that discriminate on others based on their ethnicity, or you're covertly racist. And this covert racism is a new kind of unconscious, I think it's conspiracy theory, to be honest with you. It's the idea that if you're not overtly racist, you are somehow hiding your racism. It's a racism that no one can see, this magic racism that doesn't affect people somehow. So either you're overtly or covertly racist, and this covert racism is somehow provided as proof of institutional racism, whereby the institutions themselves are racist. And people will throw stats around and cherry pick bits of data. The one that I've heard a lot this week is that in the United Kingdom, our National Health Service, black mothers tend to die more in childbirth than white mothers. And people are saying, well, that racial disparity right there proves that the NHS is institutionally racist. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you honestly suggesting that midwives, who happen to be mostly ethnic minorities themselves, let's not forget, are somehow treating white mothers more preferable than black mothers and letting black mothers die? Is that really what you're suggesting? Because that doesn't pass the common sense test to me. That's not what we see in this country. And when you delve down to the data, of course, it's a more complicated issue than that, as they always are. All of these health issues are much more complicated. And I think we have to move away from the assumption that a racial disparity means racism, because there's usually more at play.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right there, Calvin. And I think we saw heaps of evidence of that last few weeks with the ghastly Harry and Meghan, making world headlines by claiming the royals are racist and that one of their family, and they wouldn't say who, questioned what colour skin the baby would have. Now, it's now claimed that Lady Colin Campbell is now suggesting it was Princess Anne. Do you believe her? Does it matter? What's your take on it?
You know, this is a horrible situation. It's not the first time a royal prince has married a divorced American who has kind of tried to tear down our British institutions. What's happening here is that Meghan Markle is relaunching her US Hollywood career, and she's gone from a Z-list celebrity to an A-list by marrying into the royal family, and she's tearing down the institution to step on it herself as a platform. It's disgusting. She really ambiguously drops that grenade of racial abuse in the royal family. She didn't say what it was. She didn't say who said it. She just kind of implied it. And that's disgusting because, first of all, if there was an issue of racism in the royal household, that should be addressed appropriately and not aired on international television for everyone to speculate on. But secondly, if it was a conversation had around the ethnicity or the skin color of the royal baby, I mean, that's a topic of interest for everyone. I'm a mixed race person myself. I've got a white mother and a black father. I'm pretty sure the color of my skin, the color of my eyes, the type of hair and color of my hair would have been discussed before I was born. That's not racism. But again, this is critical race theory, looking at the world through a racial lens. If you address the topic of someone's skin color, oh my gosh, you must be a racist, especially if you're white. It's a nonsense. And I think what Meghan's done here is she's weaponized her race. And she does this a lot. She'll use the race card wherever she can. And Lady Campbell is right on that point in that Meghan Markle uses the race card as a platform, and it's a disgrace.
It's interesting you talk about your own experience. British talk show host Saira Khan came out, I think it was yesterday or today, and said that her Pakistani culture has actually been more restrictive to her career progression than any kind of racism she has encountered. She's a 50-year-old living in Britain all her life. In a lengthy Instagram post, she said, if I'm honest, as an Asian woman, in the UK, Asian means India, Pakistan, it's my Asian culture that has tried to hold me back more than any racism I have faced. She's now, of course, being attacked, but would you agree with her?
Well, absolutely. I've suffered more racism this past year since the Black Lives Matter movement than I have in the entirety of my adult life. And that has been mostly from other ethnic minorities, calling me words that I won't say on this network because I don't subscribe to their worldview. These people don't want equality. They don't want diversity of thought and opinion. They want to control us. They want to control the left, want to control our vote in particular. We've seen that with Joe Biden saying, if you don't vote for the Democrats, you ain't black. We've seen it in the UK with Jeremy Corbyn saying that Labour will unlock your potential if you're an ethnic minority. This is how they get their vote base. They want to hold the ethnic minority people down in order to patronize them and say, we'll support you, we'll help you. You know what? People don't need help and support in that way, in that patronizing way. We are all equal. We are all human beings and we should be treated that way. And let's also address the fact that racism isn't an issue of white on black. Anyone can be racist and anyone can experience racism. And actually, right now in the West, I think it's probably easier for people like me to get a job because people aren't hiring straight white males anymore. They are kind of the taboo. No one wants to touch them. People want, intersectionality. People want you to tick a checkbox on their identity politics chart.
Calvin, I think you've just identified a new thing, unconscious bias. I mean, I think we could run with this one forever. Calvin Robinson, so great to have you on Credlin again. Thanks for coming on the show and joining us here in Australia. You've got many fans here out in Australia, mate, so thanks so much for coming on. And we'll speak soon.
Thank you very much.